We arrived to the Dolomites in the rain, but were soon given our first gift, a cozy hotel with an incredible view and a calm, beautiful night. We sipped on hot chocolate on our balcony, giggling and wondering how on earth we got so lucky to be in such a beautiful place. Then we set off for a golden hour walk in search of a map. We ran into these gorgeous horses and said hello on the way. We made it back to our hotel just in time for dinner. We asked to sit on the balcony even though it was cold outside, and enjoyed some delicious homemade pesto pasta while taking in the views. I remember being so happy at this dinner, and Ethan saying it felt like it had been forever since he felt so calm. We said goodnight to the mountains and tucked in for a restful night before the beginning of the big hike the next day. We decided to set off for a pre-breakfast walk around town. The air was crisp and the sun was just cresting over the mountains. We wound our way up the road, saying good morning to the beautiful horses along the way. Then we made a friend, the sweetest cat I've ever met. She was so curious and playful and loving. We could have spent forever just petting her and watching her knead her paws. Of course, all good stories must come to an end, and we had to say farewell to our new friend before heading down for some breakfast. This breakfast, like all the breakfasts we had in Dolomites, was so nourishing and delicious. There were multiple courses of breads and fruits and eggs and yogurt, and something about eating these delicious breakfast spreads every morning felt healing. And then we were off on the big walk. We set off with optimism and wonder at the gorgeous landscapes. I felt giddy just getting on the chairlift and setting off on our adventure. The sun was shining and the nervous excitement of the climb ahead was bubbling up everywhere. The first few miles of the trail went by in a whirlwind. I felt like I was floating on a cloud through the mountains. I felt the sensation of being able to breathe again for the first time in a long, long time. And it seemed like no time had passed when we finally got the first glimpse of our hut for the night. We dropped our bags before heading off to our first via ferrata. I think there's something special about doing something for the first time. It's the perfect mix of excitement and nervousness, and it just gives you this sense of confidence to be doing something completely new. We climbed for a few hours and even made a few friends along the way. It was gorgeous, and I was truly elated once we made it to the top. We both had the biggest smiles on our faces, and it felt so good to accomplish something so, challenging. And it felt so good to have done something so completely new and different and a little bit scary. Scary can be good sometimes. We made our way back down to have a celebratory lunch at our hut. Cheers! We did it. Definitely. We had the rest of the afternoon to ourselves. We just played games and relaxed. I think one thing that made this trip so special was that we couldn't really use our phones. We just got to be present in this very simple day-to-day of walking and eating and enjoying the coziness of the refugios.
Is this allowed?
We grabbed a tea with a view and plotted the next day's route before it was finally time for another delicious dinner.
Vagina.
Yeah, looks good. And with the last spoonful of creme brulee, it was time for bed. We woke up to a serene morning. It was so quiet, the sun just making its way over the mountains. There's nothing that touches your soul quite like a morning in the mountains. We had another nourishing breakfast of fresh yogurt and homemade hazelnut spread on soft bread.
It's nice.
And nothing made me happier than seeing this huge jug of hot chocolate they gave each of us. We said goodbye to our hut and set off for our biggest hiking day in perfect weather with full tummies.
That's where we're going.
Our destination. Mm-hmm.
After a few hours of walking, we made it to the last hut before our via ferrata for the day. We'd heard mixed things about this via ferrata. It was supposed to be shorter than the one we did yesterday, but our bunkmate at the hut the night before had said it was a bit exposed, so we weren't really sure what to expect. It turned out to be one of the most fear-inducing things I've ever done. The climbing itself wasn't necessarily too difficult, but it was just really exposed, and there were a lot of sections with no cables. And the clouds set in about halfway through as well. Luckily, we made it through, and I don't think it's an experience either of us will ever forget. But I think it was a nice lesson in having confidence in your strength and your ability, even when there isn't something there to catch you when you fall. Luckily, there was a lovely hut right at the end where we ducked in to avoid the wind and have a snack. It was so cozy, but we still had a lot of hiking left to do before we made it to our hut for the night. So we headed back out to begin the walk to lunch.
Got some crazy people. Put a line across.
It felt so good to finally arrive at our lunch hut. The long walk down gravel switchbacks felt long and tiring and honestly never ending, and we were both happy to sit down and enjoy some warming food.
Cheers to surviving.
Sadly, we couldn't stay in the hut's warm embrace too long because we had a long way to go and wanted to make sure we made it to our hut for the night before dark. But that meant heading out to hike uphill in the rain, which felt pretty impossible. We were really tired and we'd been walking all day, and so we were feeling a little bit intimidated, to say the least. I'm always so in awe of how Ethan and I help push each other through hard things or hard moments. He definitely kept me going on this section, and I appreciate him so much. But before we knew it, the sun was peeking through the clouds. Everything turned from gray to vibrant colors around us, and we were suddenly in this beautiful, magical landscape all alone, and something about that sun peeking out. Even though we weren't up our last hill or over our last pass, it felt as though we had overcome this invisible obstacle, and it wasn't a mountain in front of us, but it was really just our own minds and finding the joy, finding the spot of sunlight in a gray day. So we had to keep moving onwards and upwards, but now with a sense of childlike joy, no sense of hurry. We made it to our last stop to rest before journeying on to the last section of the day. And after some lovely views and chats and rests and reflection on doing hard things and finding joy and purpose within that. And then we were off to Refugio d'Antermoia. I remember on this section there were no other people, and it felt like we were the last people on Earth. We'd been walking for a few days, just the two of us, and it was like we were just two little kids again, talking about old TV shows and joking around. The stress and craziness of day-to-day life had faded, and we were left with ourselves in nature, and it was very, very beautiful.
We think in the distance, right over there,
Just on a corner.
up,
That's somewhere in there.
right up there. We think we see a corner.
We spent the night enjoying incredible food and lovely decor and friendly hikers, and got some much needed rest before our last day of walking. We woke up the next day to another beautiful morning and had one last mountain breakfast before our final day of walking. We didn't really have a specific route planned. All we knew was we had to make it back to Bolzano by the evening. So we opened our map to do some brainstorming and last-minute route planning. Headed along the Alba Basin. This day was quite windy, and there was a buzz throughout the refugio about heading out early to avoid the storms forecasted for later in the day. We braved the elements and said goodbye to another very special refugio. We were headed towards Suisi, where we could get a cable car down to an area where we could get a bus back to Bolzano. Our only real goal for the day was to find a cozy hut for some coffee and cake along the way. What a beautiful way to spend the day. We walked and talked and took in the scenery with a newfound sense of presence and calm. We didn't have anywhere we needed to be, there was nothing we needed to do. We were simply walking, putting one foot in front of the other. I felt like I was noticing things more too. Neither of us could believe how green this valley was, and we found a sweet little snail friend along the trail. As we ventured lower and lower in altitude, heading deeper into the gorgeous alpine meadows of Suisi, we saw so much wildlife. We met fluffy marmots and mooing cows. It was a bit cloudy, but I don't think anything could have really dampened our mood at this point. We were just enjoying the process and the world around us, meeting it where it was at, and finding beauty simply in its existence, not its perfection.
Coming free in Wellington, 20 minutes until coffee and cake.
I just wanna go out and walk with you. Baby, you know I just like to talk with you. You don't have to tell me anything that's new. I just wanna go out and walk with you. I just wanna see your shadow next to mine, sailing over pavement with our two outlines. I like to see the shape you're in from time to time. I just wanna see your shadow next to mine.
We eventually saw our coffee and cake hut in the distance, and we were so excited for a warm break from the wind and some delicious treats. As we were walking, we suddenly saw a group of horses galloping out past the pond and into the grass. It felt so wild and free and magical. I'd never seen anything like it.
Things you can see.
And then it was finally time for a warming treat. We walked into the hut and met another sweet cat. It was quiet. We were some of the first to pop in for a break that day. We ordered hot chocolate and coffee and warm apple strudel with vanilla custard. We sat and simply enjoyed it all. This was peace. This day was peace. And this trip was peace. We finished our hot chocolate and coffee. We ate every last drop of that incredible apple strudel, and we sat chatting idly and admiring the kitty for as long as we could before we had to face the inevitable. We had to leave our cozy cocoon of warm drinks and cake, and we had to venture out back onto the trail. Even though it was rainy and windy and it wasn't quite as cozy as our hut, we had mountains to see and animals to spot and steps to take. And even though it was a bit cold and a bit wet, everything felt a bit lighter and brighter because we had that moment of reprieve and safety and healing. We had just a few miles left before we finished our walk and had to venture out into the real world too, off the trail. And it wasn't just the hut, but the journey itself and the peace it gave us that made venturing back out into the world and into our lives that much richer. Love always, Emily.